This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander Touch, and Disk Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to the MacJury on MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we're going to talk a lot tonight about the upcoming iPhone 6. The idea is going to be to examine the things that we want in the next iPhone and maybe the things that we think it needs, whether it's just from our needs or the needs of the general population to make it a success. First, let's find out who you're going to be hearing from. Going around the room, and I'm going to go right to left this time just because that way it works out ladies first. Kelly Guimont. Kelly, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
It's really nice to be here, Chuck. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a little while. What have you been up to recently?
I've been working on, I was volunteering for App Camp for Girls. We had our first session in Portland in July, and we'll have our second session in a couple of weeks. The Seattle session's going on right now, which is the big deal this year because it's the first time we've tried to export App Camp somewhere else. And if we can do this successfully, then it means that we'll be able to sort of package things up and start helping anybody in any place else that wants to build their own App Camp where they are. And so hopefully we'll be able to get some of that going. And it's going to be really exciting. I think eventually, and we've sort of joked about signing up for, who's going to get to go to App Camp Honolulu and things like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. So that's been the big thing I've been working on this summer.
That's great. So when you say you've exported it, so this isn't the normal crew that does the App Camp. It's a whole new crew, or do you have like seed people that went out to this one?
We do have seed people. Our lead developer, Nat Austin, and Gene McDonald both went to Seattle for the week. And there's a couple of other people, I think, from Portland who went. But there were people up there whose job it was to coordinate volunteers and space and campers and food and all the kinds of stuff that enough people to be able to get folks together, put together the investor panel for on Friday when everybody pitches their apps tomorrow afternoon. We had a variety of folks who were who up there had to do all of that legwork, and then we did some on our end, and we're trying to be up there in sort of an advisory capacity. Cool.
This is such an important thing you're doing, and I think it's great. So congratulations. I hope the Seattle one ends up being as much of a success as the others.
So far, it seems like it's going really well. So I'm really looking forward to what we learn from that so that then we can start building app camps everywhere.
Great. Next up, from the north and west of me, and it looks really nice on his porch, Mr. Julio Ojeda-Zapata. Julio, it's great to see you. I'm glad you were able to join us. I'm waiting for you to pick up a glass of lemonade. It just would be perfect.
There you go.
Doesn't look like lemonade, Julio. I don't know.
It's ice water. It's ice water. But
okay.
Close enough. Yeah.
Oh, it's great to have you back. Again, the same thing. It's been here a little while since you've been here. What are you up to now?
Well, I'm doing my usual tech writing at the St. Paul Pioneer Press, which is always hugely enjoyable. I've recently become a regular contributor to TidBITS. I'm writing for them on a relatively consistent basis, which is a real thrill because I'm a huge fan of that organization. And it lets me sort of broaden my tech writing chops a little bit. So those are kind of my two activities. And I'm putzing away on a new book that I can't tell you too much about. It's about coffee, but that's all I'll say for now.
All right. Fair enough. Yeah, TidBITS. I think I've heard of that somewhere along the way.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Last up and rounding out the panel, but absolutely not least, Mr. Jim Tanous of TekRevue. Jim, it's great to have you back. A little bit north of me in Pennsylvania. It's nice to have a fellow Pennsylvanian show up here once in a while.
Yes, sir. We're an underrepresented group in the tech industry, I think. But it's great to be back and be back so quickly. I was on just a few weeks ago, so it's always good to see you, Chuck, and good to see Kelly, and good to meet Julio there. But my name is Jim Tanous. I run TekRevue.com. It's TekRevue. And it's a general interest technology site, a little bit of Apple, a little bit of Microsoft, gaming, the broader mobile industry. And when I'm not doing that, I contribute to the Mac Observer with their Mac Geek Gab answers, which is the written form of the questions that Dave Hamilton and John Braun answer on their weekly podcast.
Oh, so you're the guy that is the man behind the curtain.
Well, they do all the work. I just type it up. I'm more of the monkey, so doing the work, which I read I can't hold copyrights or something is the latest story. I don't know.
Oh, darn. I was hoping I got some dirt on the Mac Geek Gab, but I guess not. No. Darn. Okay, guys. So, Jim, I can't remember. You're the one. I think everybody here. Does everybody here have an iPhone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're all iPhone users. So I guess the first question, not knowing any more than we know now, what is your feeling about upgrading to the next iPhone, just based on the speculation and based on what your normal habits are? Jim, are you going to do an upgrade?
Yeah, I will, and I do it every year anyway, just to keep up with the latest hardware. So I've always got access to what's going on, but I think this year also moving to the bigger screen, which we're almost certainly going to get at this point. I don't think we even fair to call that a rumor. That's going to happen. There's going to be at least one larger size launched this fall, and that's pretty important. I had an opportunity recently to spend some time with the Lumia 1520, which is a real big phablet-sized phone. It's running Windows Phone OS, and just having a larger screen, which I thought was a little weird at first. It took a few days to get used to it, but after those 24 to 48 hours, I really grew to like it, and especially in terms of productivity. Listening to podcasts, even watching movies is okay on the current iPhone. But for me, I'm an Office 365 subscriber, and then when I think also to iWork on the mobile side, Apple's made all these great mobile apps. Productivity on the current iPhone is pretty tough. You got to scroll around a lot, or you got to zoom way out, make things real tiny to really get the whole picture. So moving that up to a larger size phone or a larger size screen is going to be a world of difference. I think it'll be on par with the introduction of the iPad, which people decried as just being a bigger iPod Touch when it was launched. But then we learned that the killer feature was just its larger size. And that can be a real big change for folks.
Julio, you probably get to sample more phones than any of us, being associated with a major newspaper, news organization. How do you feel about upgrading? And is a phablet-sized device, whatever that means, because again, there's a bit of speculation here in this show. Is it a good idea that Apple's going in that direction?
I'll answer that two ways. I'll answer that from my personal point of view. It's not something I'm terribly excited about because I just don't like large phones. I like the Motorola Moto X. I like the current iPhones and so on and so forth. That's a perfect size for me. I don't do a lot of massive productivity on phones. I don't really want to do that. When I want to be productive, I'll switch over to a laptop or a tablet with a keyboard. So, massive productivity is not an issue for me, and I want a phone that fits snugly, comfortably in my pocket, and that I can use with one hand. So, not terribly excited about large iPhones, although it's something that Apple definitely needs to do in order to be competitive, and they're going to find an audience for it. There are going to be a lot of people that love larger iPhones, and that I think is going to cement Apple's leadership. So it's a must-do generally, and there's an audience for it. It's just absolutely not for me. So I'm hoping and I'm assuming that Apple will continue to have a phone that's roughly the size of the current iPhone, because that's what I personally want.
Kelly, that takes us to you, and I guess to pile on Julio's comment, if Apple does come out with a larger sized iPhone 6, do you think it's necessary that they keep the current form factor as well, or at least this current size, in addition to a larger phone?
I would like that because don't know who, I don't know if everyone's noticed, but I'm female, and my hands are only this big. And the current 5, when I use the current 5 in my left hand, because I wasn't an exception enough to the rule, I'm also left-handed and a girl, the top right corner of the screen is hard for me to hit with my thumb if I have it in one hand. I have to sort of shift and wiggle around for it. And to pile onto what Julio is saying, I'm assuming you guys probably don't wear women's jeans, but my pockets are almost uselessly small. And so I have a hard time getting a 5 in my pocket, and I like my phone to be in my pocket. So it bothers me logistically that it doesn't always fit. I have some pairs of jeans where that's not the case, and I have to do something else with it, and then it feels weird because my phone is supposed to be in my pocket and it isn't there. Which probably is something you guys can relate to. But I think the most interesting thing about all of the months that we've had this year of Apple must make a bigger phone is how much it has changed. Because remember when Apple introduced the first one in 2007 and said, behold, the new Apple iPhone, everybody went, who will carry that thing? It's huge. And now everybody looks at one that's even bigger than that one and says it's too small. And it's really interesting to me, the evolution of that, and that it didn't take that long, because that was 7 years ago. So seeing that evolve has been very interesting, but I do really want there to be a smaller size. I'm probably not going to upgrade to the new one. My husband might. He's not under contract, and so we're on alternating years. So that way, like, if there is something interesting that I need to check out or find out about, I can always check his phone if I want to. So right now he's on a 4S and I'm on a 5S, and he right now sees no reason to upgrade because the camera and the Siri stuff that came in the 4S is really useful to him, and so he never saw a need to even upgrade to the 5 when the 5 was released. So far, he really likes the 4S and the capability, and I think the size is really nice on the 4. I don't mind the size on the 5S, and I think it's because it's not wider, it's just taller, and I think that is a big piece of it. But I don't want a bigger phone than the phone that there is now, and it's the same sort of thing that I've looked at with wearables. Is if you watch the Google I/O keynote and see from this year, there's a woman who comes out near the end who's wearing one of the Android watches, and once I saw it, it was like the only thing that I could see because she had this giant thing on her arm, and it really looked out of place. And I think that's part of when Apple is looking at this kind of stuff. I'm hoping that there are enough women working there, or at least enough short guys to go, look, if I put this on my arm, it's not possible for me to live my life with this giant thing strapped here. So I'm really hoping that if nothing else, they'll keep the 5S around. Maybe they'll make the 8 gig 5S or something, or keep the C, which is apparently a lot more popular than people thought it was going to be, and maybe tweak the innards on that a little bit, give it a nudge speed-wise or something. I would really like for that to be what happens, because I think that the 5 is a really nice-sized phone.
So we have not exactly a wide spectrum of things, but we have different viewpoints. Because, Jim, you just look like a guy that would have big hands. I'm with Kelly. For a guy, I have relatively small hands. And so I kind of share her thing about, I can't get my hands around an iPad mini. So, and I don't, I can't see myself holding an iPad mini size thing to my head to talk. That just doesn't make sense.
Well, we wouldn't approach the size of the Mini. I mean, there are some, like the Galaxy Note, the Samsung product is almost the size of the Mini. What we're talking about here is a few inches larger, or a few inches smaller, excuse me. But you're right, it would be a dramatically larger piece of technology than we're used to. For me, though, even, I don't have exceptionally large hands, not like basketball player sized, but I do have trouble one-handedly operating the 1520, for example. But what you do in that situation is good software design, which lets you access the most common features from one side of the phone, coupled with adapting to a two-handed usage, is kind of the best solution. Like I said, it takes a couple days. There's going to definitely be some adjustment for people who have been using the 3.5 and 4-inch iPhones, but it's not I think this is something that I agree. Some people really do want to keep a phone that's the current size, but other people who have some reservations about it will probably adapt fairly quickly with a few days or a week or so of using a larger product.
Julio, let's start with you on this one. What is the most important feature in a new iPhone? What would be your number one reason to upgrade?
Well, there are actually two that are equal for me. Number one is battery life. Apple really still needs to push the envelope on that. Battery life on an iPhone isn't bad, but battery life on certain other phones is better. I'm using the Motorola Droid Max right now, and the word Max implies maximum battery life. It's excellent battery life, and we need something like that on the iPhone side. And the other thing is, even though Apple, I've used a lot of smartphones and taken a lot of pictures of a lot of different phones, and I've consistently found that Apple still has, you get the best photography from an iPhone. You still have this yawning gap between the iPhone and even basic standalone point and shoot digital cameras. So that's another thing that Apple should and will, I'm sure, will push the envelope on. We just need to consistently keep getting that photography better. So if Apple releases an iPhone that has great battery life compared to now and significantly increases the quality of the photography, I'll be thrilled. Those are the two big things that really cry out to me.
When you say quality of photography, are we strictly talking about megapixels or sensor size? Because everybody seems to keep clamoring for a better zoom lens, and that's just not going to happen. I mean, there are physics reasons that you can't have a zoom lens on a device as thin as an iPhone.
No, granted, but there's a Lumia model, and my fellow guests might want to remind me which one that is. There's a Nokia Lumia that has a 40-something megapixel camera, and megapixels aren't everything, granted, but it's a particular Lumia model that came out a year or so ago. It takes stunning pictures, not just because of the megapixels, but just the whole package yields photography that is better than the iPhone, not exponentially better, but it's better. And Apple is very good at this. They tweak everything. They tweak the sensor, they tweak all the pieces and just keep advancing the state of the art. We're not at the point where the iPhone takes good pictures, sometimes great pictures, but not exemplary pictures. It's just it's a good camera phone, but it's a mediocre camera, period. We're not at the point where I can confidently go on a trip just with my iPhone and expect to take fantastic photos. We're a long way from that point, and I hope we get there eventually. And I hope Apple takes another 2 or 3 steps forward with the next iPhone.
Kelly, do we need 40 megapixels?
I think 40 is a bit excessive because I don't expect that out of a regular, a real camera. I'm not necessarily interested in that. And when I look at it realistically, I've printed pictures that I've taken with my iPhone, and they come out really well with my 5S. And I would always like to have a better camera, but for me, better doesn't mean more megapixels. What it means is a better sensor so that if I'm taking lower light photos, I can get a better photo out of the low light, or if nothing else, be able to record enough information that I can bring it back to my computer and run some more intense graphic editing software and bring out the better version of the photo than maybe what I can necessarily see on my screen. And that, for me, is what I mean when I say I would like a better camera. So the thing that I will miss in not getting to upgrade to the 6 is getting a nicer camera, because it seems like it does get better every year, particularly with the software. Because there's always more options added in the software, more varieties of pictures now, the slow-mo stuff that I can do, the burst stuff that I can do with my phone that is a software feature that I really like. And so I think more manual controls would probably would probably help greatly. And that's part of why a lot of people, when you talk to them, don't use the default system app. They use something else instead. They use like VSCO or Camera Plus or other things because they get better control to start with. And that, I think, is what a lot of people are looking for when they say they want improvements in the camera.
So is the camera your killer upgrade feature?
It is for me, because I like to take a lot of low light, low lit pictures, things that are inside, things that aren't necessarily super brightly lit, things like that. Some of those, like I like to go, when we go to Disneyland, when we go to other amusement parks, like I like to get pictures in the evening or as it's getting dark, and it's hard sometimes to get some of those to come out. And it's hard because I don't have enough information to go back later and run some better filtering and pull out the rest of the picture that I know was there when I took the shot. For me, the hard part is really finding anything besides the camera to consider, because a lot of the stuff that is going to be new is going to be iOS 8 related. It's not necessarily going to be hardware related. So I don't need a new phone to get all the handoff stuff that happens in iOS 8. And that's the stuff that I'm really looking forward to, is a lot of things that we saw at WWDC that were demoed that are going to be fun, that are going to make my phone a lot more useful. Almost every year, it's like I get a whole new phone just by putting a new piece of software on it.
This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander Touch, and Disc Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Solving problems is something we all like to do. Whether they are our own or someone else's, it feels so good to fix something that's broken, do something that someone else can't do, or doesn't know how to do. If you agree with all that, then you need to add PDF Pen to your bag of tricks. After all this time, it still amazes me how many people view PDFs as immutable documents, as something they can only read and not work with. PDF Pen changes all that, making it easy to annotate, edit, add images, text, and more. With PDF Pen, you can securely redact information, delete text, turn scanned documents into editable text, even export PDF files to Apple's Pages and Microsoft Word. Want to take it to the next level? Find out how PDF Pen can help you create and fill out interactive PDF forms, automate PDF manipulations with AppleScript, even password protect your most important, confidential documents with 256-bit AES encryption. All those features and all that problem solving are just waiting for you in PDF Pen. Or you could get even more power with PDF Pen Pro. And while PDF Pen is intuitive, you can always use a little help to get up to speed faster and advance farther. That's why Smile partnered with Take Control Books to create Take Control of PDF Pen 6. Michael E. Cohen teaches you how to get the most out of all versions of PDF Pen, including PDF Pen for iPhone and PDF Pen for iPad. You can find PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro in the Mac App Store, and PDF Pen for iPhone and PDF Pen for iPad in the iTunes App Store. Or just go to smilesoftware.com to download demos, learn much more, and buy direct. PDF Pen is one more solution to problems you didn't even know you had. And all those flavors of PDF Pen come from Smile, the makers of world-class software. Thanks to Smile for their ongoing support of Mac Voices. Jim, I got to give you a chance to get in your killer upgrade feature. What do you have to have that, or what do you absolutely require in a new iPhone?
For me, it's going to be battery life. The iPhone 5S that I'm on, and I've gone through 3 of them through various issues, hardware issues that I've had. None of them have had, and maybe my expectations have just gotten ahead of myself, but the battery has been pretty abysmal. I can't get through a day of moderate usage without having to find a place to recharge. And so you look at bigger phones, they're not as, some of these Android and Windows phones don't have the optimizations that Apple has, but they also have batteries that are literally twice the size of the iPhone's battery. And so hopefully by moving to a larger form factor, they'll have the room for that larger battery, even though a larger screen is going to draw more power. It'll hopefully even out and tip the scales in favor of longer battery life.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that on MacBook Pros, and that's always an issue. You get the bigger form factor, so you got more room for battery, but then you're driving the screen, and the screen is arguably the thing that sucks up the most power. So, I don't know if it's an even split. Maybe they can find a way to put a little extra battery in, but then you start to get into the weight considerations. And while I think if you do have a bigger form factor, people are going to be tolerant of a little more weight, you still don't want a brick in your pocket.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Apple experimented with that from the transition from the iPad 2 to the iPad 3. Adding that Retina screen made the third gen considerably heavier than the second gen, and it was a trade-off, which I think was largely accepted by the consumer base. I'm wondering if perhaps we may see a similar instance here, because the iPhone 5S is pretty light, and the 5. I wouldn't mind add a couple ounces to it within reason to give me an all-day battery life.
Something else, guys, that I find interesting, we're talking about better camera, better battery life, the bigger screen and all. Now, I've asked you for each one of your particular favorites or requirements, but Apple's in this interesting position of trying to balance one or two models, maybe, who knows, maybe 3 or 4 by the time we get a larger phone, with everybody's needs and wants. And otherwise, they're going to turn into some of the other companies, and you're going to have availability problems, stocking problems, those kind of things. So where's the middle ground on all this? How big do you make one? An iPhone? How good a camera do you put in it? What trade-offs do you make as far as size, weight? And by size now, I mean thickness or thinness, depending on how you look at it. What do you think for the across the market are some of the things that they can't afford to do?
I'm not really sure I understand your question, Chuck, but I think Apple is inoculating itself against the need to make trade-offs by expanding its iPhone line. Each of these, if as rumored, it releases iPhones in 3 different sizes, then it has a greater deal of latitude and flexibility to possibly emphasize certain things with different models. Like if you get a larger iPhone, presumably you would get just absolutely killer battery life, which possibly might not be as fantastic on the smaller phone. So just having a larger ecosystem gives Apple a bigger playground, a bigger sandbox, a bigger drawing board, to try new things. Am I answering your question? I'm not sure I understood it on 100%.
Yeah, I guess the point is, you could make a 40 megapixel phone, or you could make an iPhone that would have a 3-day battery life, but you're going to have major compromises in any one direction for these things, whether it's a physical compromise or a price compromise. And Apple has never been about having just huge number of models. They've been more about, okay, this is what you get, and if you need that extra battery power that everybody was talking about, then you either buy an external battery or you buy a battery case. And I'm just wondering, how, if anybody has thoughts here on what they can't afford to do. They can't afford to make it too heavy. They can't afford to make it too big or too small. Is there a critical mistake that could be made here that would, you think, put the future, or at least the iPhone 6 in a perilous position?
Well, I think they can't afford. I mean, like I said earlier, I think it's a foregone conclusion from what we've heard and seen that the iPhone 6 is going to come in a larger size, at least one larger size. I don't think they can afford not to do that because for as many people like Kelly and everybody, I know lots of people who prefer the current size. I know people who still wish they could have the old 3.5-inch iPhone. The problem is, and there's a great graphic. I'll send it to you, Chuck, and hopefully you can put it in the video here. It's a graphic that shows all the top phones right now, and all the phones are lined up and they're sized proportionate to one another. And every one of the top selling phones is notably larger than the iPhone. The iPhone 5S, which was so big when it launched, looks absolutely puny now. And that's the perception. I'm not saying it's accurate. I mean, a lot of people, it's a lot of power packed in that little guy, but you're talking about the people who want to go in and buy a smartphone. Apple's explosive growth is not because techies are buying the phone. It's because average consumers are buying it. And they go into an AT&T store or Verizon store, and they see the line of phones along the wall, and they're all nicely powered up. And everybody else has this big, beautiful display, and Apple has a much smaller display. And unless that consumer is already educated on the benefits of the iOS ecosystem and the iPhone hardware, they're going to naturally think bigger is better, and they're going to be drawn to one of these Android phones or one of these Windows phones. So, like I said, I don't think it's something that's realistically we're going to have to worry about. But by some chance, if Apple doesn't make the phone, significantly larger, that will hurt their long-term growth, I think, because they've already captured the market that loves Apple, and they've already captured the market that appreciates iOS. They need to convince those who haven't yet to sign on.
And the phone that I think illustrates your point beautifully is the brand new LG G3 phone, which has a super high resolution screen. Compared to most phones, it has an incredibly thin bezel. It's very Apple-like. People like to say Samsung copies Apple, but I find the Samsung S line to be very plasticky, very cheesy looking, very cheap looking. It's good hardware, but it's very cheap feeling, cheap looking hardware. The LG G3 is a good point. Absolutely Apple, beautiful phone. And to your other earlier point, I use it like I'm using the G3 during the day, and I sort of get used to it. But then I go into my home office. I have a shelf where I charge all my devices, and I put the phone there. And my iPhone, one of my iPhones, happens to be next to it, and it's just laughable how they vary in size. It's comical. And so I agree wholeheartedly that this is a step that Apple has been hesitating to take, but really needs to take now and start pumping up the size of the devices for purely competitive reasons. It remains to be seen whether larger iPhones are going to be a hit. It's an open question. They possibly might not sell as well as the small iPhones. We just don't know. But it's gonna be interesting to see what happens.
Well, it almost doesn't matter, does it? I mean, all these people who think that they do want something larger, if they don't like it, if it turns out it takes 2 months to figure it out, they're stuck with it for another 22. So, and I know a number of people who, like, just in hearing folks out in the world talking about, yeah, I bought it, but it's super big and it doesn't, I never thought about sticking it in my jeans pocket. I never thought about it doesn't fit in my purse very well. It doesn't fit in the cup holder in my car the way my old phone used to. And a lot of times people don't figure that stuff out until that 14 days is up, when you can return it sort of with no strings attached. And I think that there's a certain number, like I've heard a number of people who are like, yeah, I'm just stuck with it for another year. Woo. And I think there's a certain amount of that as well. So it's not, a lot of people who think they want a bigger phone may be really happy with it. And some of those people may get that phone and after a month just go, oh, this is horrible. I don't know what I'm going to do. It still counts as a sale initially. So it's really going to become, I think, the quarter after the phone comes out. I think that's what the sales really are going to reflect, is if they were on the right track with letting fly on a different size. Now, loads of people sort of poo-pooed the Mini when we started hearing rumors that they were going to put out a smaller iPad. And people went, who's going to want that? Nobody wants that. If I want a smaller iPad, I have a phone. But lots of people have found that it is super duper popular, and that little size is super handy.
Isn't it funny how when we have larger, we want smaller. When we have smaller, we want larger.
Nobody's happy.
Yes, somewhere somebody's just got to be saying, "What's wrong with these people? Can't they ever be happy with anything?" Right.
And my favorite are the people who dictate from on high as though it's going to happen only because they say so. Yeah. So Apple must make a bigger phone, make a smaller tablet, make a car, make a television, whatever it is, like that. We keep hearing it all the time, and Apple's ignoring all those people, and they seem to be doing okay.
Funny how that happens.
Yeah.
Which leads me to one that I've wanted to ask your opinions on. And Jim, you play a little more. You and Julio especially play a little more in the non-Apple field probably than Kelly and I do. But the last time we had an iPhone come out, absolutely Apple. Oh my God, they're doomed if they don't put in near-field communication, NFC. Oh, it'll just be horrible. And of course, it didn't happen. And the iPhone 5S didn't die. In fact, it's sold kind of well, as I recall. Certainly, the stock price looks that way. Is there anything out there you think that is sort of that way now? Because it does seem like NFC has suddenly declined in popularity, or at least maybe that's because I see it through an Apple lens.
Well, I don't recall anyone who was serious or should be taken seriously saying that if the iPhone didn't have NFC, it would die. I think there was a lot of optimism around Apple harnessing NFC as part of a broader payments initiative, which still may occur. But I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, there's always this talk, like you said, before every launch, there's talk of what Apple has to have or else it's going to fail. And of course, they never fail. I mean, there's also some truth to the point that Apple could put out a toaster and stamp its logo on it, and people would stand in line. It has a very dedicated base of consumers. But I don't, I can't think of anything. Looking at what the other manufacturers have put out, it's mostly speed and it's mostly size and battery life. You're right, NFC. There's not been a lot of NFC talk, and I'm not sure there's any one particular technology that's floating around that I could think of that people are clamoring for in this next iPhone phone.
I've heard a lot of people talk about inductive charging, but that's not even a solid thing on the Android side at this point. Like, there's a lot of different competition and standards, and so I don't, until that stuff sort of settles down, I don't think it's going to happen. That's going to be a thing that happens either.
All right, and I've played around with several third-party inductive charging technologies, and they're all incredibly flaky. They really have a long way to go before they standardize that technology, I think.
Yeah, inductive charging and payment technology, both of those strike me as things that tech companies have wanted to foist on us, and we're just not having it. Like I'll be honest. A couple of years ago, I wrote a bunch of breathless stories about how you can go into McDonald's and tap your phone to the payment terminal, and boom, you've got your Big Mac, and it's cute, and those terminals are all still out there, but I just don't know that anybody's using them. Every time I actually make an NFC payment in a store, I always get the same comment from the clerk. The clerk says, "Oh gosh, you're the first person who's done that," or "I didn't know you could do that," and I just leave them flabbergasted. And so, Square is another good example. The Square, which has a little card swiping dongle, isn't doing very well. I don't know that it's that hard to take your wallet out of your pocket and hand somebody a credit card. So I'm not really sure what the big deal is. Inductive charging is another great example. It might take off. There's a lot of talk about embedding, the charging panels into coffee shop tables and car dashboards, and there's a lot of talk about that. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. Kelly makes a good point that there's. I've counted at least 3 incompatible competing standards for that sort of thing, and it's just it's like 3D HD TVs. Who the hell cares? So those are good examples of things that tech companies are throwing against the wall to see if they'll stick, and they just kind of slide down. So,
okay, sort of on that note, I've like you all, I listen to a lot of other Mac podcasts and a lot of podcasts in general, and I'm going to say one word that keeps cropping up in so many of them, and I'm almost sick of hearing about it, and that is Sapphire. Sapphire, Sapphire, Sapphire. I feel like I'm in a Paris Hilton movie. It's like, come on, guys, jeez. A tougher iPhone would absolutely be nice from a lot of standpoints, not just the one where, the kid drops it and breaks it 2 days after they get it, but also from Apple's side for repair, replacement, and all that kind of thing. I guess the question is it a killer feature? Is it a differentiator?
Well, I think you have to get past the Sapphire name. Apple has this sometimes annoying tendency to want to attach a catchy catch name or catchphrase to a particular feature. I think Chuck, you need to take 3 deep breaths and sort of get past the word sapphire. Just get past it, and just think about a phone that at last will no longer require you to scurry quickly to Amazon to buy a case. Every time you buy a phone, you automatically buy a case. It's sort of a reflex. You buy a case every time you buy a phone. And I think Apple is holding us by the hand and taking us into a new world where you no longer have to, panic at scratching your fancy new phone, and just don't worry about it. That's what I think it's going to do with its next, screen technology. And if that's the case, that'll be great because I don't want to put a case on my phone. I want to enjoy my phone the way it is. But the klutz that I am, and it's just impossible. I can't. I've lost count the number of times I'm at a mall and my phone clatters, to the hard porcelain tile surface, and I would have been on my 4th or 5th or 6th phone by now if I hadn't had a case on it. I don't want to do that anymore, and I hope Apple makes that brave new world possible. So,
the word you're looking for, Julio, is dropper, kicker, thrower.
Exactly. By the way,
because I'm one too. That's why I know.
By the way, off topic, I just noticed your Dalek T-shirt.
Okay, so in all fairness, I have to show you the rest of it.
Oh, cool!
Ooh.
Excellent. Oh, neat.
Very nice. Very nice.
So, R2-D2 piloting a Dalek was just not a shirt I could resist. So.
Okay, I just completely blew my mind.
R2-D2 is not made of sapphire. Let's just I'm trying to bring it back for you, Chuck.
Thank you. Well, I've taken Dr. Zapata's suggestion, taken 3 deep breaths, so all is good now. All is good. This edition of Mac Voices could have been sponsored by you. Mac Voices is always looking for sponsors who appreciate our high-signal, low-noise approach to tech topics with an Apple focus. Our sponsorship packages feature inclusion in all of the audio and video versions of Mac Voices at all of their distribution points, a web presence, inclusion in the Mac Voices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and more. Get the details by contacting me at chuck@macvoices.com or contact Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. But Kelly, I saw you raise your hand when he said klutz, which I thought was an interesting reaction. Are you a dropper kicker? What was it? Dropper kicker thrower?
Dropper kicker thrower. And I have. If I had it handy, I would show you, because I still have it, my tungsten T3 in this machined metal case that looks like it's been through a couple of wars. And it was like the second case that I had on my Palm because I destroyed the first one. And I was trying to be careful with it because it was really expensive. So I'm really interested in the idea of this, and I really like the idea of the durability of it, and I like the idea that I don't have to have a case, and that it's an optional thing or a functional thing. I want a case because it's got a battery in it. I want a case because it's one of those ones on Kickstarter that has like screwdrivers and nail files and stuff through the back of it. I have a case because it's my wallet, and now this one device is the only thing I need to move through my day. So that it's a functional reason, and so that it's not because I'm a dropper kicker thrower, and so I have to have a case. I think that's a big piece of it. And for me, I've had a cell phone in some form or another for a really long time. Like, it was the 90s. And I hold it to my ear a lot. I've gotten better about that, mostly because I have a headset, and so if anybody calls me in the car, I get them on my headset. But if I hold it to my ear, I wear diamond earrings, and so every phone I've ever had until like my 4S had two little grooves in the glass from where I held it to my head. All of them. The plastic ones were special because that didn't take long at all. But I'm interested in it because it's an advancement in technology. But I think even if Apple does it, it's not going to be the thing. Like every phone so far has been a thing. Like the first one was Apple made a phone. And then with 3G, the thing was the new network. And then with the 3GS, it was video. And with the 4, it was it was the new form factor, and we got a lot of speed out of the new one. And then with the 4S, it was Siri, and with the 5, we got a new form factor again, and with the 5S, we got Touch ID. And so I don't feel like this is necessarily something interesting enough on its own. So if they were to say, oh yeah, we have the Sapphire screen, and also it does this other thing, whatever that might be, I think that's the piece that's going to be interesting, because I don't think glass that isn't quite so scratchy is going to be the thing that's really going to make people go, ooh, well, totally need to upgrade. Here, Apple, take my money.
My point on this is, I agree with Kelly. It's not going to be the selling point. I'm sure Apple will come up with a proprietary name to describe it and give it a 15-second mention at the keynote. But more interesting to me about this is that we've used Sapphire in consumer applications for a while, but never at this scale. It's hard to manufacture at the sizes of an iPhone, even especially the larger phones. And so what's interesting to me is that we've got Apple with their purchase of this GT Advanced Technologies company and basically hoarding Sapphire. In fact, Jeff Gamet at the Mac Observer had a piece on this today, I believe. The thing that's interesting to me is Tim Cook now, who's at heart a logistics guy, is prepping Apple to be the premier supplier of large format Sapphire displays for the future. So that if this does become a thing, if this does kick off an era of no, you don't need a case for your iPhone anymore. It's an indestructible piece of technology. Well, now Apple's controlling. They're the king of the hill. They control the supply. They control the manufacturing. They have the advanced manufacturing methods at their disposal, and that's huge. Consumer will probably never see that, never care directly, but that's something behind the scenes that is going to give Apple an advantage in the next few generations of these products.
The slightly tricky thing, though, is Apple has this vast created this vast ecosystem of accessories, of cases, and a lot of case makers stand to lose a great deal if Apple very aggressively plays this. You don't need a case card anymore, and so I'm just speculating, but my hunch is Apple's probably going to underplay this feature. Maybe it's going to be sort of an aside, oh, by the way, our screen is pretty good, and kind of leave it at that. It's my suspicion, because Apple has a vested interest in not undermining or partially destroying, this vast marketplace it has created, which in and of itself is a lot of great advertising for the Apple brand, because rival phones, I can't think of a rival phone that has as much case selection as an iPhone does.
Not even that, but a friend of mine whom I loaned my iPhone 4 to because he's trying it out to see if it's what he wants to get, he noticed that when he went to pick up a case for it, that almost every case he looked at was either transparent or had a cutout strategically so that you could see the Apple on the back of the phone. And it didn't even occur to me that that was a thing until he said that. And then I sort of flipped through them in my mind and went, yeah, they kind of all make it so that you can see the Apple on the back. And I thought that was really interesting, that people want you to know that, and a lot of case makers, I think, are that way. If it weren't for case makers and accessory people in general for the iPhone, I don't know that the Apple stores would be where they are, honestly. I mean, you can go and get a phone and that's like a one-shot deal, but like I go in and I roll through there and look at stuff and who's got a new case and what does this look like, and do they have more for the 5C and all different kinds of stuff. And I think a lot of people probably do. You're already at the mall, and it gives somebody something to do while somebody else is going to a store that they find really tedious. So they go in the Apple store and check stuff out. And the fact that you don't have to talk to anybody and you can scan it and pay with your iTunes card and just leave with the credit card you have on iTunes and then walk out of the store. Like, they've made it so easy to hand them money for stuff like cases and new headphones and all that kind of stuff. I think I agree with both of you, because I think Apple's definitely going to call it out, but I don't think it's going to get its own commercial or anything like that, because I think Apple knows enough that they know that they have a good thing going with the case people.
I don't know. I guess I'm torn on that, because Kelly, I like what you said about functional cases, and that's where my head goes. But I'm constantly amazed at the people that get cases that, I mean, frankly, they offer no protection or whatever, but it's because it has their favorite sports team on it, or their favorite color, or, rhinestone encrusted iPhone cases, which I absolutely do not understand, but that's okay. What's that? Oh, an app camp for girls. Well, now see, that's understandable.
See, I'm advertising.
Yeah, that's understandable. That's a great case. But it's a matter of personal expression. It's a way to take this high-tech device and make it very personal. And that's something that I personally don't value. I don't know if you all do, with the exception of Kelly and her advertising. But it seems to be very definitely a thing. And I'm not sure that it exists in the Android side. Jim, do you see cases being a big thing over on that side?
Well, they certainly are, and a lot. I agree with you, Chuck. A lot more. I see a lot more that are basically people attempting to assert brand loyalty or a favorite cartoon character or sports team or whatever. But I think, in this country in particular, I don't travel abroad very frequently, and so I'm exposed to this country where the iPhone is the number one selling smartphone, and so I see at least a majority, or at least a plurality, if not a majority, of cases are iPhone cases. But cases are definitely a thing amongst the Android and Windows Phone people. Less so amongst Windows Phone, because Lumia, or Nokia, now part of Microsoft, has done some great things making those cases particularly durable. But a lot of the Samsung phones and stuff, I don't know anybody who doesn't have a case. They may not use it all the time, but they all have one.
And just one quick additional comment on cases. There are some, as you note, Chuck, there are some really lame cases that offer no protection and just basically advertising for your sports team. At the far other end of the spectrum, I've seen some really remarkable innovation on the case front. I'll just give you one example. There's a company here in Minnesota called Twig Case Company, and they've figured out a way to use it looks and feels like wood, but it's actually a compressed paper substance called Richlight. And they figured out how to create cases that almost look carved. They feel like wood, but they're really compressed paper. And then the material lends itself to some really intricate carving that I cannot possibly describe to you. You need to go to twigcase.com and check it out. And this is the kind of stuff that Apple has spawned. Apple has amazing creativity, but also has this amazing ability to spawn creativity in other companies like this. And this is something that I don't think Apple wants to go away. And so again, I'll get back to my earlier point that it'll probably soft pedal the Sapphire, because this kind of amazing stuff, you want this kind of stuff to stick around. So
now I'm all distracted by that case. I'm like, ooh, I wonder what that looks like. Because here in town, we have a company that laser etches bamboo into cases. Grovemade.com. They make amazing stuff. They started out as furniture folks and got into bamboo, and they machine it out of bamboo and rub it all with oil, orange oil, right there in the shop. It's all done right here in Portland, and then they have cases for stuff. And they've also done some with recycled bits of skateboard. And it's more of that creativity that you're talking about that Apple has created in others, because they were like, of course we were going to get into the iPhone case business. If we were going to make anything for phones, this was exactly what it was going to be an iPhone all along. And so now I'm like, oh wait, but those are laser carved too. Now I want to find out what those look like.
They're very interesting.
I confess, I guess I just don't get fashion and technology in this space. When we have an iWatch, or if we have an iWatch, or whatever that device will be, maybe I'll get it more. Certainly in clothes, it makes a certain amount of sense. But this iPhone cases, I don't know, I'm just missing it.
There's a certain amount of utility too, Chuck, and I don't know how many people are going to see that the rest of the time. But if all four of us were in a room together and we all set our phones on the table, how would you tell which one was yours? And this is an easy way to tell without turning them on. Most of the time, we only have this problem at Macworld, but if you live someplace where lots of other people have iPhones too and you hang out a lot, it can be very easy to set your phone on the table and be talking to somebody who sets their phone down, and now you have these two iPhone 5s, and how do you figure out whose is whose? Well, mine is the one with this case on it, or I have an OtterBox or whatever, and it's another easy way to tell without having to turn it on and figure it out.
And that's all true, and I don't ever expect the case industry to ever go away completely, but I will say that I don't necessarily share the optimism, I'll call it, of Julio and Kelly about Apple not wanting to upset or impede the case industry. This is a company that has, throughout its history, but in particular since the return of Jobs in the late 90s, been willing to turn on a dime and alienate its closest friends.
That's
and
true.
They do it all the time in the App Store. People come up with great ideas for apps, and then Apple says, oh, that's a great idea, and they introduce it as a standard feature in the next iteration of the phone. So
it's its own verb. That's how good Apple is at it. It's called being Sherlocked.
Right, of course, yes, Sherlock, the unfortunate software. But so that's the thing is if Apple could come up with a truly virtually indestructible phone, I don't. Deep inside, I don't believe they would downplay that. I think they would introduce it and they would tout it, and their competition be damned, or not their competition, their partners be damned, because that would allow the Apple aesthetic to be proudly displayed instead of covered amongst these variety of cases, which as phones start to merge in similarity and in terms of form factor. With a case on it, I know, Kelly, you said a lot of them have the cutout for the Apple logo, but a lot of them don't. I mean, mine is just a plain black back. So it would be hard to tell if this was a 4.7-inch phone, whether this was an Android or an iPhone, and I'm sure Apple doesn't want that. They want their logo clearly displayed all the time, so I can definitely see them touting that. The thing is, Sapphire display is not going to be the end of it. The rest of the phone is still going to be vulnerable to damage in certain situations, so we're not there yet, but I wouldn't. If you're a case maker, I wouldn't count on Apple having your back 100% of the time.
Well, Apple is certainly has the back of sticker makers, so maybe that's a.
Julio, you took it right out of my mouth. This is a really interesting discussion, given it's one of the most recent Apple commercials for the MacBook Air is one that I won't say advocates, but features stickers to customize the look of your MacBook. So,
so I can see both sides of the argument. Like, for instance, Jello Skins, a company that used to make skins for the lids of, they're still around, but I stopped being their customer when they stopped carrying the skins that had Marvel Comics themes. They sort of severed their ties with Marvel, and there are no more Marvel skins, and so I'm no longer their customer. But that's an example of a product that completely covers the Apple logo, yet looks fantastic. So that's something to consider.
Do you guys have stickers on your laptops?
I do not.
No.
I'm the only one.
Well, Kelly, I don't, but I will say that I go another direction because I keep all my MacBooks of whatever model in one of the spec hard shell cases.
Oh,
now it's clear, and you'd never know unless I handed it to you that it was on, because then it would feel a little different. But with sliding in and out of backpacks and everything, I like to keep my Macs pristine so that not only do they stay looking good, but they have good resale value. So that's an investment I make every time, and I love it because I just don't worry if it slides across the zipper in the backpack or whatever. It's the case or the hard shell that's getting
the shell, not the.
So
okay.
There's an in-case hard shell that I've used from time to time, and I echo your sentiment. That's a great option.
Yeah, and it adds virtually, I mean, sure, it has to add a little weight, but it doesn't add much weight at all. It doesn't add much thickness at all, but it protects it. So maybe if I could get a sapphire-covered MacBook, maybe I'd feel better about the whole thing. I don't know, guys. It's something. This is a show I've wanted to have for a while, just to kind of discuss this, because I think we all listen to the speculation, we listen to the rumors, and you really have to boil it down to what you want, what you need, and what Apple wants and needs for the next iPhone. So hopefully we've shed a little light on it. If not, at least it's been fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely been fun. If we have time, Chuck, I'd like to bring up one more quick point.
Sure, by all means.
My thought too with the phone is one of the things that Apple has to consider is that our market is slowly moving away from this 2-year contract situation. And Kelly, you kind of brought this up earlier when you were talking about the larger phone, and if somebody gets it and they don't like it outside of the return period, they're stuck with it for 2 years. T-Mobile's leading the charge. AT&T and Verizon have introduced these sort of hybrid plans. And what this means is that a lot more consumers are going to be buying phones at effectively the full price, either paying the money up front or, paying it in installments over the life of their service plan, but without a contract. And the iPhone is one of the most, if not the most expensive full price phone on the market. And a lot of their competition on the high-end Android side and high-end Windows Phone side is $50 to $100 less, if not more. There's a couple Windows phones that are available for $99 without a contract. And I think that's an area where they may want to consider, and this would be I don't know how they could work this with their margins, but that's something that's going to be changing over the life of this phone. If we look at it from 1 to 2 years out, this country is going to change pretty dramatically, I think, in terms of how people buy and pay for their mobile phones. So trying to move it at a lower price, making it more appealing for people to buy that phone without a subsidized contract could be important.
The other a related point that is, I admit, highly, highly speculative is the fact that Apple releases phones at yearly intervals. And to your point, the fact that now people are not on 2-year contracts and are therefore prone to pounce for a phone more, possibly more often. That sort of begs the question: will Apple maybe go to 6-month cycles? And I remember, many years ago when Macs were not updated as quickly as they are these days. I remember, back in the 2CI days, I think a 2CI computer was around for like 2 or 3 years at a time, and now Macs get updated a lot more frequently. And I wonder, again, highly speculative, but I just wonder if Apple will, with the iPhone, will pick up the pace, particularly since its competition seems to be releasing new phones at monthly intervals. It's not quite that frequent, but it certainly feels that way.
Yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings about that. Just again, for the very reasons that we've been talking about. I kind of get the point that some of these phone makers are a lot more fleet of foot and they release things a lot faster. But I also think that leads to a certain amount of customer dissatisfaction that if indeed I've laid out the kind of money that I have to for an iPhone, even with the subsidies, and then find out that in 6 months it's not a new phone anymore. That just bothers me, especially when. Well, I'd have to see what the differentiating factors are, but if there's a big differentiator, I'd be even probably more upset. So.
And it probably wouldn't necessarily be entirely new models. It would probably be bumps, spec bumps, but just at more frequent intervals. I think Apple needs to do that at some point, but again, I'm just speculating.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been fun. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for shedding a little light, and I guess. Whenever the iPhone 6 is released, we'll stand in line together virtually because we'll all be in different places. Unless, Jim, you want to come down here to my area, you're welcome to and stand in line with me.
Sure. We don't have an Apple Store in Erie yet, so I may take you up on that, Chuck.
There you go.
I've got to live stream the whole thing.
I've got a spare bedroom. Come on down.
Where are you, Jim?
That's good. You'll regret that offer. I'm sorry?
Where are you, Jim?
I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there you go. There you go. But that invitation was only for Jim, folks. If you come to stand in line with us, you've got to find your own hotel room. Jim, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Julio, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chuck. I appreciate it.
And Kelly, App Camp for Girls.
Well, I keep trying to explain it's a little bit self-serving. I'm tired of being the only girl. So I'm helping do something about creating more so that it doesn't always have to be just me.
Great. Good priority. I like it. When you get them up to speed, send them here. They're welcome anytime.
Excellent. I will. I'll send a bunch to stand in line with you for a new phone.
Perfect.
Okay.
Folks, thank you for joining us. It's always fun to get together with friends and discuss some of this stuff. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will be back with more on MacVoices. Until then, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the Mac Voices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest Mac Voices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at CashFly.com.